What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over how you can get easy wins in Fortnite Chapter 5. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below how many crown wins you have so far this season. So I'm going to be going over kind of like what you want to be doing during the different stages of the game to make it as easy as possible to win. I've made videos like this in past seasons, and people have always found them super helpful. So the first thing we're going to talk about, obviously, is going to be where you're going to land. I did make a video last week about like some low-key landing spots, but I think for this season it's best to land either at or near one of the POIs which has a boss with a medallion, because not only are the medallions great, they allow you to regenerate shield over time, and the mythic weapons are really good, but these are the only guaranteed spawns for the workbenches that will allow you to customize your weapon. So if you want to, put a specific sight on your weapon, or for me, for example, the weapon I'm most concerned about the attachments with are going to be the sniper. I really like having the 2x scope on it, and I also really like having the angled foregrip on the sniper, trying to fight, sniper versus sniper battles where you're like peeking from behind cover without the angled foregrip just feels really bad to me. And then also if you're using the auto shotgun, I think having the speed mag is very important. And so if you don't go to one of these workbenches, you're just going to have to make do with either the attachments that other people put on their weapons or, the ones that you find on ground loot weapons. So I would highly suggest either, like I said, landing at the POI itself, fighting the boss, getting the medallion after clearing the POI, or you could just land somewhere else, like somewhat nearby, and then rotate into the POI, potentially eliminate the player that got the boss and just get yourself a free medallion. But even if that person is already gone, being able to make use of the workbench, I think, is super important. And for the weapons I like to use this season, for zero build, I've liked using the Frenzy auto shotgun, the striker AR, the sniper, heals, and then mobility. I do prefer shockwaves over the grapple blade for sure. And I also really like having a car this season. The G-Wagon I think is just the best car in the game right now. For whatever reason, the map just feels big to me. Like this map feels larger. It might just be the same size, but it might be the newness of it. I don't really know what it is, but this map feels large and there isn't as much like natural mobility as what we had in Chapter 4. There's not as many like launch pads around the map for you just to like pad around. There is some on the edges, but not as many in the middle. So having a car is very important this season. I would highly recommend it. It's pretty much always been good in zero build. You can kind of get around the map faster. It's mobile cover, which is great, especially with how prevalent snipers are this season. You can kind of get out, you use your car as cover and snipe at people. Also, just the ARs this season kill incredibly fast, and sniping is very prevalent. So the less time that you're just kind of traveling out in the open, the better. And the cars, are going to make that happen less often. So I would highly, highly recommend trying to get a car this season. I think it's pretty important. Radio towers are back, and on screen now I'll have a map from Osiren, which has the radio tower spawns, like where they are and the percent chance. This will also be linked down in the description below. Like Chapter 4, there will be 3 towers that spawn per game. You can see them while you're on the battle bus and landing, and they will spawn 30 seconds into second zone, just like how it was in Chapter 4. One kind of difference is that like seemingly there is 100% chance spawn radio tower near Reckless Railway, and one of the kind of crazy things about this is Reckless Railway is already a really good spot because it has a boss with a medallion, it has a workbench, it has this 100% chance radio tower, but also the player from Grand Glacier should rotate into this radio tower as well if they are going to go for one. So you should be able to get the radio tower and then fight that person, or fight that person and then get the radio tower. But either way, if you land Reckless Railway or either Grand Glacier, either one, you have a decent route to that 100% chance spawn radio tower, and another player that's going to go for it with a medallion. So if you win that fight, you have 2 medallions and forecast and attachments on your gun, and potentially those mythics if you do want to take advantage of them. So Reckless Railway has been one of my favorite landing spots for that reason. Not only the workbench and attachments, the medallion, you have a pretty decent chance of getting a second medallion at that radio tower, and then forecast itself, which is one of the more like insane advantages we've ever had in Fortnite. And I will talk more about why the radio tower is so helpful later on in the video when we get to endgame. And so after I get my radio tower, I kind of just go from zone to zone, play the game out, position yourself for endgame, and I will want to fight any of the medallion players if I have the opportunity. Players with a medallion are marked with a gold circle, and the more medallions they have, the smaller the circle is. So if you have 2 and you see another like somewhat small circle, you know that's the player with all the other medallions. And the more medallions you have, you regenerate health even faster, which is very, very good. So I will try to look to fight these players. Obviously, you don't want to just force it and just drive straight at them. But if you have an opportunity, if you know there's like a medallion player in the area, if you have the opportunity to kill them or third party them while they're fighting, that'll be great for you because you'll have more medallions and you do put yourself on the map more, like I said. But we'll get to that end game later on. The island does spawn at 4th zone, but I don't think there's as much incentive to go for it. It doesn't have any set mythics from it, like how it did in the past. You just get like some loot from capturing it. But at this point in the game, you probably should have solid loot. It does have a workbench, but trying to go to Loot Island to use the workbench, I feel like is a little rough. The pads and the rifts on it are pretty nice though, because with the ARs all being projectile, I feel like it's way harder to like beam people out of the sky. So if you do want to just use those rifts and then fly away, that is like an option to you. But I don't like doing that as much because like I touched on, I think the car is super important. So I'd rather just drive to zone than rift to zone if I have the opportunity. Also, once you're into like 3rd or 4th zone, whatever, after radio towers, this could be a decent chance for you to go for a workbench if you haven't already been able to go one. If you do like to play a more passive style and you didn't get one earlier on in the game, any of the medallion POIs that are on edge of zone probably will be somewhat desolate at this point if there are any that's playable to you. But like reckless railways and fencing fields are kind of in the middle of the map, so I feel like these POIs just kind of always have players going to them. So if it's either of those, it'll be rough. But if it's a zone where like Grand Glacier or Lavish Layers in zone and they're kind of like on the edge, then you maybe could hit those up to get attachments after the radio towers if you are just, you know, late on your rotation or you don't really want to fight people, whatever it is. And I talked about how I wanted to fight the medallion players if possible. And in Chapter 4, I talked a lot about how if you went for the mid-match objectives, like the vaults, the radio towers, Loot Island, you tended to fight a lot of like the active or better players in the lobby. And that's kind of how I feel this season about the medallions. I've had several games this season where I get all of the medallions or I get like 4 of them. And then at that point in the game, it's just like all very like scared players or AI, like people that don't pose much of a threat. And that's one of the reasons why I don't care that much about the downside of the medallions revealing my location. That, and I'm often playing off a car anyways, so like people are going to know where I am. But like I said, if you get these medallion players out of the game, you probably got rid of most of the other like threatening players in the lobby, and it just makes winning the game much easier. Like I don't know about you guys, but I would rather fight these players in the mid game than just like fight them in game and potentially get like third partied by them while I'm fighting somebody else. So if I have the opportunity to get those medallion players out of the game, that's huge. Not only do you get the medallions plus their mythics, you get the better players out of the lobby most of the time, I think. And for in-game this season, I think it's best to try to play edge as much as possible. And this is where, like the edge of zone, and this is where forecast is really, really overpowered. Because when you get to the point in the game where we have moving or partial zones, because recently they did update the zones to be back like how they were in Chapter 4, where there was like several moving zones or several like half and half zones. But since you have forecast, you can just always play the edge of the current zone, which gives you the easiest route possible to the next zone. Whereas other players that don't have forecast, they might play edge and then zone pools on the complete opposite side of the area. And now not only do they have to worry about getting to the safe area, they have like a fixed amount of time to do that, and they're having to respond to that on the fly. Whereas like if you have forecast, you see where the next zone is going to be, and you could just put yourself in the best spot to just give yourself an easy chance to get to it. I think forecast plus these zones is just such like an OP combo. I'm happy they gave us these zones back, but I would rather not have forecast in the game because this is where it is like very broken. And when you are playing these partial zones, the easiest way to look at it, I think, is if how you want to play will depend on how many players are left alive in the game. If there's like very few players alive, or it's just like one squad in squads, then you can kind of just play the edge of the new zone where it kind of borders the old, where everyone has to come through. You can just kind of play that edge and hold people from getting to the zone. Or if like there's people fighting in the old area, you could just kind of play edge and then stop them from getting to the new area and third party that fight. But if there are still several players or teams left alive, like 5 or 6 players in solos or like 2 or 3 squads left, then you probably just want to get deep into the new area and then play for future moving zones. And the reason for this is if you have several players still left and or several teams, and you're playing the edge of the new area, everyone is going to push into you or push around you, and then you're just going to be pinched. Whereas if there's several people left and you kind of go deep into the new area and play away from the edge that everybody has to come through, you're going to be much safer, and it's going to be way less likely you get third-partied because that edge is going to be the hottest part of the zone with everybody having to come in that way. There are like some people going for like storm rotates this season, since you can heal while using the medkits, or you can walk while using the medkits, sorry. But either way, that edge of the new zone is always going to be the most hot spot, and you probably only want to play to hold people if you're going to win the game off of it. If you're not going to end the game off of it, then just go deep and play for the next future zones until you get to the point where you can win the game off of it. Every game is different, and there's a lot of situational decision making, but that's just the easiest way to describe it. I think you only want to play edge of new and hold people if it's going to end the game. If it's not going to end the game, then you're like really risking that you just get like pinched and focused on, and then you're probably just going to get like chain third-partied until you're out of the match, you know? And so that's just the easiest way to play endgame, I think, with these partial zones, especially in zero build. And this is one of the reasons why the car can be so helpful. Not only do you have cover everywhere, but it makes it much easier to just like travel deep into that new zone if you need to. And then again, the same thing repeats. Play edge of that, bordering where the next one is going to be, and then try to get to that zone before everybody else. If you can end the game off holding them, or like they're fighting in storm, whatever, play the edge, hold them, win the game off of it. If you're not going to win the game off of it, probably just play for future moving zones. And that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with endgame, is they just like worry too much about kills, I think, and not as much about like just consistently putting themselves in the best position in zone, because if you do that, you're going to win the game anyways. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting. Very similar to Chapter 4 in terms of how you want to play the zones in game and how you want to get forecast. I think forecast is huge. I think the medallions are huge. And I also think the attachments are very important if you have specific setups that you like to run. Like I said, the angled foregrip on the snipers and the 2x sight are just like drastically increase my enjoyment of that. If you found this helpful, informative, give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.